For today's breaking news, we have the Philippine Constitutions, Taxations, and Agrarian.
Constitution of the Philippines. The supreme law of the Republic of the Philippines has been in effect since 1987. There were only three other constitutions that have effectively governed the country: the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution, 1973 Constitution, and 1986 Freedom Constitution. 1899 Malolos Constitution, known as the Constitution Politica de Malolos, and it was written in Spanish. Following the Declaration of Independence from Spain on June 12, 1898, and transformation of dictatorial government to a revolutionary government on 23 of June. Convent in Barasua in charge in Malolos, and now it is called Malolos City, Bulacan. Pedro Paterno as President and Gregorio Araneta as Vice President. Opposed by Apolinario Mabini, the Prime Minister of the Revolutionary Government. Ratified on November 29, 1898. Signed into law on December 23, then approved on January 20, 1899. Sanctioned by President Emilio Aguinaldo on January 21 and promulgated on January 22. Then anchored in democratic traditions that ultimately had their roots in American soil, modeled on the Constitution of France, Belgium, and Latin American countries. Then states that the people have exclusive sovereignty. Preamble of Malolos Constitution. We, the representatives of the Filipino people, lawfully convene in order to establish justice, provide for common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the benefits of liberty, imploring the aid of sovereign legislator of the universe for the attainment of these ends, have voted, decreed, and sanctioned the following political constitution. Next is 1935, the Commonwealth Constitution. The 1935 Constitution of the Philippines was written in 1934, approved and adopted by the Commonwealth of the Philippines from 1935 to 1946, and later used by the Third Republic of the Philippines from 1946 to 1972. It was written with an eye to meeting the approval of the United States government as well, so as to ensure that the U.S. would live up to its promise to grant the Philippines independence and not have a premise to hold on its position, on the grounds that it was too politically immature and hence unready for full, real independence. Preamble of Commonwealth Constitution. The Filipino people imploring the aid of divine providence in order to establish a government that shall embody their ideals, conserve and develop the patrimony of the nation, promote the general welfare, and secure to themselves and their posterity the blessing of independence under a regime of justice, liberty, and democracy, do ordain and promulgate this Constitution.
The Constitution of Biak na Bato was the provisionary constitution of the Philippine Republic during the Philippine Revolution. The Katipunan's Revolution led to the Tigiros Convention when at San Francisco de Malabon, Cavite on March 22, 1897. Although only Katipuneros, members of the Katipunan, were able to take part and not a general population. So there are three organs of the government under the Constitution of Biak na Bato. Supreme Council, which was invested with the power of Republic, headed by the President and four department secretaries: Interior, Foreign Affairs, Treasury, and War. Consejo Supremo de Gracia y Justicia, Supreme Council of Grace and Justice, which has given the authority to make decisions and affirm or disprove the sentences rendered by other courts and dictate rules for the administration of justice. Asamblea de Representantes, Assembly of the Representatives, which has to be convened after the revolution to create a new constitution and to elect a new council of government and representative of the people. Preamble of Biak na Bato. The separation of the Philippines from the Spanish monarchy and their formation into an independent state with its own government called the Philippine Republic has been the insult by the revolution. The existing war began on the 24th of August 1896 and therefore is named by the power delegated by the Filipino people, interpreting faithfully their desires and ambitions. We, representatives of the revolution, in a meeting at Biak na Bato, November 1, 1897, adopted the following articles for the Constitution. So the government that was established in Biak na Bato was the first constitutional republican government in Filipinas. Although its constitution was provisional, its preamble stated the separation of Filipinas from the Spanish monarchy and establishment as an independent and sovereign state with
The 1987 Freedom Constitution. On February 11, 1987, the new constitution was proclaimed, ratified, and took effect, establishes the Philippines as a democratic and republic state where sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. The 1987 Constitution is important because it specifies the right of the people to choose their leader or suffrage through elections and provided for means in identifying who are qualified to elect and be elected to office. This constitution was intended as a transitional constitution to ensure the democracy and the freedom of the people. The executive branch. The executive branch is headed by the president and his appointed cabinet. The president is the head of the state and the chief executive, but he is subject to significant checks from the other branches, especially in times of emergency, which, given the history of our country, was obviously intended to be a safeguard against a repeat of Marcos martial law despotism. Example of this case is the president can declare martial law but not for a period longer than 60 days. The Congress can also revoke this decision by a majority vote, or it can also extend for a period to be determined by the Congress. Legislative branch. The legislative power is vested in the Congress, which is divided into two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The 24 members of the Senate are elected at large by popular vote and can serve no more than 2 consecutive 6-year terms. Congress is responsible for making laws to make sure the spirit of the Constitution is upheld in the country and, at times, amend or change the Constitution itself. In order to craft laws, the legislative body comes out with 2 main documents, bills and resolutions. Judicial branch. The court system in the Philippines exercises the judicial power of government, and it is made up of a Supreme Court and lower courts created by law. The Supreme Court is a 15-member court appointed by the President without need for confirmation by Congress. Appointment, however, is limited to a list of nominees presented to the President by a constitutionally specified judicial and bar council. The judicial branch holds the power to settle controversies involving rights that are legally demandable and enforceable. This branch determines whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part and instrumentality of the government.
Changing the Constitution. Constitutional reform in the Philippines, also known as charter change, colloquially CHACHA, refers to the political and legal processes needed to amend the current 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. Under the common interpretation of the Constitution, amendments can be proposed by one of 3 methods: a People's Initiative, a Constituent Assembly, or a Constitutional Convention. Proposed amendments or revision to the 1987 Constitution. Ramos administration. The first attempt to amend the 1987 Constitution was under President Fidel Ramos. Among the proposed changes in the Constitution included a shift to a parliamentary system and lifting term limits of public officials. Ramos argued that the changes will bring more accountability, continuity, and responsibility to the gridlock-prone Philippine version of presidential bicameral system. Some politically active religious groups, opposition politicians, business tycoons, and left-wing organizations opposed the process that was supposed to lead to a national referendum. On September 21, 1997, a church-organized rally brought in the estimated 500,000 people to Rizal Park. Estrada administration. Under President Joseph Estrada, there was a similar attempt to change the 1987 Constitution. The process is termed as Concord or Constitutional Correction for Development. Unlike constitutional reform under Ramos and Arroyo, the Concord proposal, according to its proponents, would amend only the restrictive economic provisions of the Constitution that are considered to impede the entry of more foreign investments in the Philippines. Aquino III administration. President Benigno Aquino III had no concrete plans regarding constitutional reform, but several proposals were put forth by different members of Congress. Senate Resolution Number 10 by Senator Pimentel called for constitutional reform to convert to a federal republic. Belmonte's joint resolution on economic provisions defiled a bill pushing for a federal and parliamentary government in addition to economic liberalization. Duterte administration. During the May 2016 election, Rodrigo Duterte stated in May 2016 that a plebiscite on the proposed replacement of the unitary state with a federal one will be held in 2 years. After winning, Duterte proposed to revive the proposed form of Neni Pimentel on December 7, 2016. President Duterte signed Executive Order Number 10 creating Consultative Committee or CONCOM to review the 1987 Constitution. Then, on July 3, 2018, the CONCOM unanimously approved the draft Constitution through voting. It was submitted to the President on or before July 9 of the same year. Federalism. Federalism is a proposed type of government wherein sovereignty is constitutionally divided between the national government and subdivisional governments such as states or provinces. Federalism divides the country into several autonomous states with a national government. How federalism works? The autonomous states are even further divided into local government units. They will have the main responsibility over developing the local industries, public health and safety, education, transportation, and culture. These states have more power over the finances, policies, development plans, and laws.
Agrarian Reform. What is CARL? The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law was made into law on June 10, 1988 through Republic Act Number, known as an Act instituting Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program to promote social justice and industrialization. Proclamation Number 131, July 1987, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for the other purposes. EO 229, July 1987. Phase 1, 1988 to 1992. A. Rice and corn lands covered by PD number 27. B. All idle or abandoned lands. C. All private lands voluntarily offered by owners for agrarian reform. D. All lands foreclosed by government financial institutions. E. All lands acquired by the Presidential Commission on Good Government. F. Lands operated by multinational companies, and G. All other lands owned by the government devoted to or suitable for agricultural purposes. Phase 2, 1988 to 1992. A. All alienable and disposal public agricultural lands. B. All arable public agricultural lands under agri-forest, pasture, and agricultural leases already cultivated and planted to crops in accordance with 6 Art 8, 1987 Cons. C. All public lands which are to be opened for new development and resettlement. And D. All public agricultural lands excess of 50 hectares. Phase 3. A. Land holdings above 24 hectares up to 50 hectares, 1992 to 1995. B. Land holdings with the areas between 5.1 and 24 hectares, 1994 to 1998.
What are the principles and policies under RA 6657? Promote social justice and to move the nation towards sound rural development and industrialization, and the establishment of owner cultivatorship of economic size farms as the basis of Philippine agriculture. Have more equitable distribution and ownership of land, with due regard to the rights of landowners, to just compensation, and to the ecological needs of the nation.
What are the key components of CERL? First, land tenure improvement. Second, agrarian justice delivery. And the third, program beneficiaries development. What land is subject for reclassification? Only agricultural lands are allowed for reclassification in cases where lands ceases to be economically feasible and sound for agricultural purposes as determined by the Department of Agriculture, or have substantially greater economic value for residential, commercial, or industrial purposes as determined by the Sangguniang Art 38 RA 7160 o 1991. These reclassified lands are classified as secondary. EERL is a violation of rights to private property. This is not true. Right to private property is not absolute. Land has a social function and land ownership has a social responsibility. Section 1 of Article 13 of the 1987 Constitution states that Congress shall give highest priority to the enactment of measures that protect and enhance the right of all the people to human dignity, and reduce social, economic, and political inequalities, and remove cultural inequalities by equitably diffusing wealth and political power for the common good. Constitutional restriction in land ownership. Section 3, Article 12 of 1987, Philippine Constitution states that foreigners are not allowed to own land in the Philippines. Statutory exclusion under RA 6657. All lands actually, directly and exclusively used and found to be necessary for parks, wildlife, forest reserves, reforestation, national defense. Is there limitations on the authority of local government units or LGUs regarding reclassification? Yes. Section 1 C&D of Malacanang Memorandum Circular Number 54 Series of 1993 provided the following limitations: 15% for highly urbanized and independent component cities, 10% for component cities and first to third class municipalities, 5% for fourth to sixth class municipalities.
General principle and concept of taxation. The need of taxation. The government serve to promote the general where the protection of its citizens to follow the function, education, defense, social welfare, food production, protection of the environment. Objective of taxation. To raise fund, to distribute wealth, to regulate consumption, to protect local industry. Classes of taxes. Subject, purpose, authority imposing the tax, determination of amount, who bears and burden, graduation rate. As to subject classification, personal tax, imposed to individual residing within the specified territory regardless of the property corporation. Property tax, levied on the property. Excise tax, levied upon good consumed, sold, or manufactured. According to purpose, revenue tax imposed to collect the revenue of the general purpose of the government. Income tax and sales tax. Regulatory tax imposed on special purpose like the protection of local industry for foreign corporation. According to determination of amount, specific tax is the one assessed on the base of the taxpayer, while ad valorem is when assessment is based on the percentage of the value of the item. According to who bears and burden, direct tax when a person on whom the tax is imposed absorb and burden like income tax, while the indirect tax is an amount paid by the other person and other one who illegally imposed. According to authority imposing tax, national tax imposed by national government, income tax and custom duties. Local tax levied by the municipal, provincial or barangay government is the real property tax. According to graduation rate, proportional if based on a fixed percentage of the amount of property, income and other factors. Sales real property tax. Progressive when the rate increase as the tax base is increase. Income tax. Regressive, the effective rate decreases as the tax base decrease. Requisite for ideal tax system. Ideal must be adequate to raise money to support the goal. Equitable system should be perceived as fair. Economically efficient, should support the economic growth. Simple, rather than be impediment to investment and barrier for debt.
That's all for today's news, and stay tuned for more news update.